Good evening. Honoured guests and HSBC colleagues, welcome. Welcome to the third HSBC Diwali celebration. It's an absolute delight to welcome you all to our location here and to this wonderful evening. HSBC aspires to be the world's leading international bank. And as a result, we greatly value the cultural diversity of all the places in which we work and we live and have our business. And so this evening is just a wonderful occasion, again, to celebrate the richness of our cultures together. My name is Ian Martin, and my day job here is to lead the insurance business in the UK, working with Antonio. Perhaps though the more interesting part of my role is to sponsor one of our diversity and inclusion work streams. So part of our valuing of difference and cultural diversity, we run a program where we promote all the different forms of diversity in our community and workplace. And I look after the religion and faith diversity work stream, hence why I'm delighted to welcome you all here this evening. But we have many other programs as well. But I think for me this evening, it's about a celebration. It's a great celebration. And I know Surinder has put in a huge amount of work with his team in preparing this evening for us. So without further ado, I wish you a tremendous evening this evening, and Surinder, let me pass back to you if you've got a moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Nearly caught me off guard. Firstly, thank you, Ian, our CEO of Insurances, for opening tonight's event. It's an honour and a pleasure to have the support of our executives. As you all know, we most of us do a job and a half, so it makes it much more easier when we have your support. So thank you for being our chief sponsor of this event. So ladies and gentlemen, Your Holiness, our dignitaries externally and our clients, you can imagine what an honour it is for me tonight to be hosting not the first, not the second, but the third annual celebration of the Festival of Lights, Diwali. Now, before we begin, I'll have to do the formalities of the housewarming. So in the event of an evacuation, the exits are on my left-hand side. Sprinklers will go on, so just feel free to cover yourself if they do go on. And only if you really need to, the bathrooms on my right-hand side. So ladies and gentlemen, over the past few years, I believe our events have achieved a few of our purposes. As Ian was describing, the fact that we're trying to create an inclusive culture, make an awareness throughout our bank, within our employees and our clients, of both our values and also an awareness of some of the etiquettes, the cultural norms of ethnic minority groups. And therefore, through the initiatives of diversity and inclusion, the Vedic Society have tried their very best to contribute towards the goal of diversity. Now, we've also achieved a few other objectives. Some of you obviously attend for the entertainment. Others, no doubt, the philosophical-minded, attend to hear a little bit about the philosophy and the wisdom embedded in the various festivals. And probably only a few of you attend for the feast and the food. However, I want to take this opportunity to tell you something else. The Vedic Society also achieved some very extraordinary things. And I'll tell you a secret, which I will get told off a bit later on, I'm sure I will. At our first event, 2 bankers met and actually fell in love. Bankers also fall in love. And only a few months ago, they tied a knot. They're here somewhere. I won't embarrass them. So we have achieved, I'm sure next year we'll have probably babies also that have come as a result of these events. Expectations. Last year we had over 1,000 of our colleagues attend, and this year we've cut the numbers down so we can manage both the queuing and the food. This time we have an automated form of barriers happening, so I promise each and one of you will walk away with a plate of food, and I will not get an inbox of complaints. However, I think the most toughest expectation has been the expectation of my wife, who demands a new sari at every event. But for another time. For tonight, we've tried to bring together the best of our past stage events, which includes, amongst our various speakers, His Holiness, who I'll speak about a bit later on. We've also brought on the best entertainments of our dance performances on stage too. So I do really hope that we are able to tick some of the expectations that you have all attended here to witness and participate in. Now, very quickly, I was told off last year for not speaking about Diwali. So all of you have heard for 3 years, for those who have attended in the past, how Diwali, the Festival of Lights, its origins in a text which was written by the poet Valmiki, said to have actually been written 1.2 million years ago. And the central person of the epic of Diwali is Rama, the king, the son of the king of King Dashrath, who was the monarch of Ayodhya, which is present-day North India. Now, we've heard time and time again on how Rama, for many people of the faith, for those who are somehow or another inspired by the story of Rama, he sets an example in whatever role of life he accepted and partook of. However, tonight we will be focusing not on the central character Rama, but we'll be focusing upon his consort, or his wife, Sita. And therefore the theme of tonight's evening is the culture of wealth. Now, very briefly, and our keynote speakers will discuss at length in a few moments, Sita is considered to be the goddess of fortune. And as you all know the story, when Ravana, the evil dictator, kidnapped Sita, ultimately, despite Rama having achieved victory over Ravana, as our Prime Minister spoke in his Diwali message a few days ago, victory of righteousness over unrighteousness, we find that Ravana, who represents a misuse of wealth, was ultimately perished by his own deeds. And only when wealth was managed through a culture, only when wealth was managed through a set of values, did it flourish in the hands of Rama. And therefore, tonight's topic is the culture of wealth. Our next part of today's events is going to be a live performance using the flute. Now, the flute, in the Indian tradition and the culture, is actually considered to be one of the most highest recognized forms of instruments. When in the hand of the deity Krishna, as he blows the flute, it is said that all Vedic literatures or the Indian philosophies manifest gradually in the form of the textbooks. And therefore tonight, our flutist will be performing 3 different melodies. Now, I'll tell you just a bit about one of the melodies. The first melody will be the melody of creation. Now, in some traditions, we have creation began with a big, massive bang. Now, the Vedic tradition always has to be different, always has to be the opposite. So in the Vedic tradition, creation began with a very beautiful melody. So tonight, once you've heard the flutist, you can decide which of the 2 you prefer. So can I now kindly invite our musicians to please come on stage.
The other 2 are joining me a bit later.
Okay, right. And I'll now hand over to a person who only recently gained her PhD in music, Dr. Lord Rama. Please round of applause. Thank you.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I'm Lord Rama, and I will be playing for you 3 devotional songs on the flute. And before I begin, I will say a few explanatory words to give you an idea of the meaning. I'm not actually going to be starting with the Song of Creation, that's the second piece for tonight. But the first one that I'm going to perform is a Bengali song, and it is entitled Gopinath. It is an expression of prayer and humility, and there are 8 verses in total, and I'm going to play 4 of them. The English translation of the primary verse reads, O Gopinath, lover of the devoted, please hear my request for liberation from the material world. I long for peace and love. So the second piece is the Sri Brahma Samhita, and tradition has it that the celestial Brahma invoked this particular melody and hymns at the time of creation. There are 62 verses, but again I'm only going to play a few of them, and the English translation of the primary Sanskrit verse is, I invoke Krishna, the primeval Lord who is adept at playing on his flute, whose eyes are blooming like lotus petals, whose head is bedecked with peacock feathers, whose beauty is tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and whose unique loveliness charms millions of cupids. And for this one, I would like to introduce Kalvi and Abhishek, who will be accompanying me on mridanga and kartalas. So the final piece is a very traditional bhajan for Diwali, and incidentally was a favourite of Mahatma Gandhi. Raghupati Raghava is probably sung in every home celebrating Diwali, and if you know the words, please join in.
Thank you so much, Lena and Abhi and Kavi. I used to think that only doctors only gave flu jabs, but doctors also play the flute. So thank you, Lena. I think that was extraordinary, that was phenomenal. And while I was sitting in the back, I have to admit, I think I dropped a tear. So that was phenomenal. Thank you, Lena. Ladies and gentlemen, normally we have our keynote speaker speaking towards the end, but tonight we're going to go straight into the main speech of tonight. Now, as you all know, His Holiness has kindly attended our event in the past, and on demand, we've somehow managed to request His Holiness to attend here again to deliver the keynote speech. Now, very briefly, because we've all heard of his introduction, which has no limits, I'll just give a quick summary. His Holiness was born in Chicago, and during the 1950s, he came to have a problem about how the counterculture was being followed by people of the US and possibly the globe all over. He was confused, trying to understand why people hate people. He found it difficult to believe why people exploit each other. And this thought, this meditation, drove him to hitchhike across the entire globe in search of answers. He possibly attended most of the large monasteries around the entire globe. He studied various traditions, and while he was on his journey home, he ended up in India, where he took the immortal sacred vows of a sannyasi, the vows of a renunciate, which basically means a person who spends their entire life for the benefit of others. 40 years later, His Holiness has been spreading the message of love and devotion to literally millions and millions across the face of this globe, from all backgrounds, all nationalities, and all types of cultures and traditions. Over the past 40 years, His Holiness has also taken the attention of presidents of states, of members of parliaments across the world. He also mentors various high net worths, chairmen, executives, industrialists, while at the same time he also is the mentor of many actors and actresses both in Hollywood and Bollywood, while at the same time, through his own charities which he has set up, he stays and sleeps amongst monks and orphans. And one example, the beautiful hospital established by himself and some of his followers in Mumbai, he also takes the hand of the terminally ill and gives them hope. Only a few weeks ago, when I managed to get in touch with His Holiness, I came to understand how he was about to embark on a 2-week program of delivering lectures to thousands and thousands of people who have traveled all over the world to assemble for a pilgrimage in a place called Vrindavan, which was in North India. And His Holiness literally spent hours every day lecturing and giving discourses to these thousands of people who have traveled from literally every country around the world. And he only gave his last lecture at 10 p.m. on Saturday night. And he just flew in, and it clearly shows how His Holiness has a lot of affection and a lot of love for each and every one of us and HSBC. Therefore, you will know what an honour and a pleasure it is for me to invite on stage a person from a tradition which dates back over 5,000 years, beginning with Lord Krishna, a renunciate monk, speaking on the subject, how to cultivate a culture towards wealth responsibility, the wealth of ours and others. May I kindly request you all to please join me in very loudly welcoming His Holiness Radhanath Swami.
Jnananjanachalakaya chakshurunmilitam jena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shamyavadi Aschatya Satharine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's my great honor and joy to be with all of you this evening. First of all, let us all offer a prayer in our hearts, remembrance to all of the people who are suffering in the Philippines during this time of great crisis. Such sobering moments really do help focus us on what really matters in our lives. I'm very grateful to be here at HSBC. It's my 4th time speaking to all of you, and I really feel like I'm coming home to family when we're together, even though I haven't had a bank account since 1969. In my interactions with the leaders and the people connected to HSBC, I really do find a real aspiration for making the world a better place through values, human values. Earlier this year, I was in Chicago. I was invited to a very prominent international corporation to meet with the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, and the COO. I don't even know what they mean actually. And it was a very beautiful meeting. They asked me something about a recent talk I gave at the House of Lords at the British Parliament. And I told how I spoke about 40 minutes or something. But one sentence I said, many people afterward were telling me how it really transformed their way of thinking. And I was thinking how this sentence was such a simple, common sense thing. So the CEO was really interested, what did you say? The words were that you can understand how rich you are by counting how many things you have that money cannot buy. Remember, people clapped when I said that, House of Lords. When the CEO of this corporation, who had just come flying in on his own private jet to meet me, he became so enthusiastic. He said, yes, the most important, meaningful things in life, money cannot buy. And he went on with a list. It cannot buy happiness. It cannot buy peace. It cannot buy values. It cannot buy interrelations of quality with family. It cannot buy love. I think he's a billionaire. After he went on and on about all the things that money cannot buy, I asked him, why do you work so hard for money? And he gave me such an honest answer. He said, because the other things it can buy are very nice to have. I was very satisfied with that answer. Today, the topic of the talk is the culture and responsibility of wealth. And the special occasion is Diwali, which is one of the most beautiful celebrations within the Vedic Sanatana Dharma or Hindu religion of India. It is called the Festival of Lights. Actually, traditionally, and this has been going on for centuries, for millenniums, where practically every home, they put little lamps with some oil and a flame on their windows, on their roofs, in their homes during the nighttime. The spirit of this festival is how light conquers darkness, how love conquers hate, how compassion conquers selfishness, how forgiveness conquers arrogance, how humility conquers arrogance, and how selfless sharing is the real value in which we can find deep fulfillment in our life. The symbol is a little flame of fire, which not only illuminates, but it also gives warmth. And with all rituals, they have an inner purpose, a symbol. Diwali is really to light that flame, the flame of love and compassion within our own hearts. As far as wealth, it could have such a divine purpose if it is used in this spirit. According to the Vedic system, or bhakti, wealth is sacred. Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune. And when we understand the potential sacredness of wealth, we can use it for our own enlightenment and for the prosperity and enlightenment of the world. But like fire, fire is so crucial. It's the fire within our stomach that digests food. It's the fire of the sun that gives us all the energy in the world. Fire dispels darkness. Fire cooks our food. Fire keeps us warm. But if we're not attentive, fire can also have one of the most destructive powers. When I was a little boy, I remember my aunt, who I love very dearly. She burned to death in a building that was on fire. And I remember after hearing that, I went into my basement where we were living and I saw a little fire keeping the whole house so warm, because in Chicago, where I'm from, the winters were extremely cold, this much snow. So the beautiful things in life, if they're used properly, can can have such benefit to ourselves and to the world. But if used improperly, it could cause so much sadness and difficulty. The history of Diwali, which Surendra has spoken of, he said I was going to speak about it, so I guess I will. Sita is the mother of all living beings, according to the Ramayana. And as a mother, she nourishes all wealth, all fortune, the earth, the environment. They are all ways that the mother nourishes us. To understand that the environment is sacred, that our health and our intelligence is a sacred gift, that the wealth or money that we may have is also a sacred gift. And to use it according to that principle, our very lifestyle in banking or in business or in politics, whatever it may be, becomes yoga. It becomes a path of spiritual enlightenment. In the Ramayana, Sita was the consort or the wife of Ram. Ram symbolizes the highest virtues. For the purpose of honor and integrity and defending his own family, he was willing to go to the forest for 14 years, to leave behind his palaces, his wonderful clothes, his fine foods, for a higher principle. And Sita went with him. Ravana kidnapped Sita. He was so immensely powerful, so immensely wealthy, but it breeded within his heart envy and selfishness and incredible arrogance, where he thought he had a right to do anything he wanted for his purpose. In the end, of course, he lost everything. The principle of the Ramayana is that these two forces are within all of us. There is the Ram, our divine nature, and there is the Ravana, our very selfish nature. And real values is to overcome these selfish, arrogant tendencies for that higher purpose of seva, or service. Service to humanity, service to God. This is a basic spiritual principle that is universal. Anandamayo Vyashat, it says in Brahma Sutra, that every living being is seeking fulfillment. And true fulfillment within is to love and to be loved. Things could give some temporary satisfaction to the mind and to the senses, but things can give no fulfillment to the heart. Only love can give fulfillment to the heart. In 1971, Mother Teresa taught me that same message in her little convent in Calcutta. The real problem in this world is hunger. hunger of the heart. And she said, I see this hunger even in the wealthiest people of New York and London, in Bombay, in Paris. People are starving for love. And from a spiritual perspective, the origin of that love is between the Atma, or the true self, and the Supreme, who we call Krishna, or God, who has many names. Let us take some examples. In the Old Testament, Moses, these are universal spiritual principles. He was Prince of Egypt. He had tremendous amount of luxury and an incredible future of power. But for a higher principle, he went into the desert and took his people into the wilderness. Would he have made such an impression in the world if he just remained happy as the Prince of Egypt? Higher principle. In the New Testament, Jesus, he said, make your treasure not in this world, make your treasure in the kingdom of God. Because the treasures of this world are either going to be burned by fire, or rusted by rust, or eaten by moths, or stolen by thieves. What is the use of gaining the whole world, he said, if you lose your immortal soul? And in both these testaments, the first principle is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And if we do that, what is the natural byproduct? That we love our neighbor as ourselves. Everyone is our neighbor. Diwali teaches us the principle of unity in diversity. There are people of many colors, of different sexes, of different nationalities, of different religions, or no religions. There are people of different species. How to live with compassion by seeing the unity and the sacredness of life. You see, we cannot really appreciate the sacredness of wealth unless we appreciate the sacredness of life. The life that is within ourselves. When we identify that and appreciate that, then we can actually see that we're all part of the same Creator. Whatever our religions, nationalities, or social status may be, we're all a family. And real fulfillment in life is according to what we have and what we can do. We're here for each other as a family. Compassion. This is the essence of human values, and it is the essence of all spiritual paths. In my tradition, Lord Chaitanya, he was a great avatar of Krishna that appeared about 500 years ago. And he spoke about Prem Dhan. This was his message. That the greatest treasure, the highest wealth, is love. When we awaken that love for God, then naturally it's like watering the root of the tree, and that water extends to every part of the tree. Each flower, each twig, each leaf, everyone. the Atma, or the living force within us, is spiritual, eternal, full of knowledge and full of happiness. And that happiness is built on the foundation of love. When we connect to that love, we find a wealth that neither time or death can ever take away. When we find that potential within ourselves, then whatever we have becomes an instrument of that wealth. Our intelligence, our influence, our money, our skills. This is such a great need within the world. As I was sitting, I was speaking to Antonio Simons. And he was telling me how much he's so grateful to be a part of HSBC Bank, because the leadership really is striving to focus on values and actually trying to help the world through those values. Generally, when swamis like me think of banks, it's a very materialistic, greedy kind of a environment. But it doesn't have to be that way. It could be just the opposite. Because where there's influence, where there's leadership, where there's wealth, there's the capacity to make the biggest difference in the world. And when we take responsibility for what we have to make a difference in the world, then our life becomes very meaningful. And we can be instruments to make so many other lives very meaningful. What is the legacy that individually, as a family, and as a society, we are going to give to the next generation? This is the most important consideration. Values, our values more than anything else, our character, is what's going to influence our children and our grandchildren to lead meaningful and fulfilling lives. I'd like to give a simple personal example. Tomorrow I fly to Chicago. It is my father's 90th birthday. I was thinking, if anybody has read the book I wrote, The Journey Home, you know how much distress, anxiety, and suffering I caused my father and mother. So at least I could be there for his 90th birthday. Of course, now he's very happy and very proud. But I remember something he said to me when I was 10 years old. It has not just what he said, but how he lived it his whole life. That was 53 years ago. At that time, he was an automobile dealer. And he was taking a lot of loans from banks. And he was selling a car. Many of you are too young to understand the context of what I'm about to say, but it was called the Edsel. It was the biggest financial disaster in automobile industry's history. My father lost everything. The banks were trying to take our little house away, and he was struggling and struggling. He was going to these bankruptcy people and they were trying to convince them that he's really trying to make up for things. He was working about 18 hours a day, constantly, just trying to save the family from total poverty. And he used to tell me, he said, it's not how much money we have that's important. It's our love for each other. That's what's really important in life. Never forget that. And I used to ask him, well, if that's what's so important, why are you working 18 hours a day? He said, I have to, because we have to, do the needful in this world. He said, but don't be misled. It's our love for each other and the values that we hold that is the only really important thing in life. Little did he know that I would become a renounced monk and Swami on the basis of his teachings. But I can say that later on, he became very wealthy by his hard work. But that principle remained the foundation of his life. It's the foundation of the family that he created. Whether we're monks, whether we're millionaires, whether we're billionaires, whatever our particular occupation or status in society, whatever our religion, it's this type of character and values. How to share, how to take responsibility for each other. That really gives human life meaning and value. It is said that if you lose your wealth, you lose nothing. If you lose your health, you lose something. If you lose your values, your character, you lose everything. People who have much are in a position to do such great sacred services for the whole world. Human evolution is not just in our science and our technology. Human evolution is when individually and collectively we go from the need to get to the joy of giving. And I know many people, and some of those people are sitting right in this room today, who really seriously work hard as anybody I've ever seen in their occupations. And by their creative genius, they really have accumulated a lot. But their motivation is to serve God and serve society through doing so. And what they're doing is phenomenal. They're making a serious difference in people's lives and in the world. That potential is within all of us. When we have a foundation of inner peace and inner values, it gives power to whatever we do. The power of love, the power of compassion. When we learn that every word we speak, every act we do, and what we do with what we have is an investment. An internal investment that we really takes responsibility. I am overjoyed that the HSBC Bank is opening their doors to give us a chance to speak these words. And I dearly appreciate this opportunity. Each and every one of us in our own ways are leaders. And we're giving our values to the next generation and to the world today. Let us be instruments of real positive change in everything we do. Thank you very much.
My job gets very difficult. Thank you so much, Your Holiness, for sharing such immortal words. I'm not even going to try to replicate and describe some of those sentences which were phenomenal. But what I would like to say very quickly is in the Holy Gita, we read the words Upadakshanti te jnanam, jnaninas tattva darshinam. The Gita speaks of self-realized souls who are enlightened because they have seen the truth. Your Holiness, I feel enlightened. These words of the Gita make sense to me now, 18 years later. The Upanishads speak of the words Tad Vidgyanartham Sa Gurum, that the spiritual teachers of various traditions, they are able to transform religious doctrines, philosophies into something practical. Today, Your Holiness, I understand those words of the Upanishads. And finally, in the Puranas it says, even a moment's association gives an individual protection from the worst types of fears. I always feared being a banker, and today I'm quite proud to have the opportunity to make a difference. Thank you so very, very much, Your Holiness, for coming time and time again. Now, before we move on to our grand finale, where you'll actually see me dance, I would like to say how honoured I am to have Mr. Ian Martin opening today's events, presided by Mr. Jack Emanuel, our head of CMB. And what more can I say, apart from what a pleasure and honour it is for me to now request our CEO of the UK and the Deputy CEO of Europe to give a closing address on what it means to consider wealth as sacred in HSBC. Kindly join me in welcoming Mr. Antonio Simões.
Thank you. That was so inspiring, and actually, as I was saying, a very hard act to follow. So, and I'm conscious that I'm the last person between you and the grand finale, and also the food. So I'll try to make my remarks reasonably short. So I would like to add my welcome to everybody to the third Diwali festival that we celebrate here. It's a fantastic festival of lights, and I would like to thank, first of all, His Holiness. It was truly inspirational. I was looking at every single word. I was reflecting in my head. Clearly, darkness and light and humility and arrogance were two of the words that I took from the speech, but also the speech around values, which really speaks to us in HSBC and how we think of values. I was very, very inspired, so thank you again for an incredible contribution. I would like to thank our great musicians earlier, so that was really, really special, but also to welcome all of our employees and our other guests here tonight. I know how busy everybody is, and so I really appreciate you coming tonight. I would also like to thank Surinder for organizing. I don't know where he went now. I was looking at him there. I think we need to absolutely thank him. It is fantastic devotion and out of his personal energy that these things happen. So thank you so much for organizing. So I would like to only say a very few words on why actually we support this annual celebration and why we've done it for the third time. And from my perspective, this is very simple, actually. Apart from being a spectacular festival and how amazing the Festival of Lights is, there are three very strong reasons why we support the festival and celebrating it here. First is to expand our cultural awareness. As Surinder mentioned earlier, and actually Ian mentioned at the beginning, we have actually last month, it was our Diversity and Inclusion Month. And apart from being the CEO of the UK and the Deputy CEO for the rest of HBU, of Europe, I'm also the chair of our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So Ian leads one of the streams, and I chair it personally. And the reason why it's so important to be here tonight is that we're celebrating our cultural diversity, and we're celebrating the inclusiveness with that cultural diversity. So that's the first reason why it's so important that we're here tonight and that we're celebrating together. I took the words unity in diversity, and that's extraordinarily important for us. Unity in diversity. I think that's really, really important at the heart and soul of HSBC. And as I was saying earlier in our conversation, is absolutely aligned with our values. Our values at HSBC are to be open, connected, and dependable. And particularly the open part of our values is being open to different ideas, cultures, and perspectives. And so this is absolutely aligned with HSBC and with our values. So that's the first area. Actually, someone asked me in the beginning, why is it that at HSBC employees tend to stay for such a long time? And I was saying that we have 270,000 people globally, and the only thing that unites us, it's really our values. And that's why we, in many ways different from other banks, have such loyalty of our employees because of the emphasis on values. The second reason why I think the festival is so important is one of the words that Surinder said earlier about some of the philosophical messages around it. And I was writing down this and saying, this is the legacy that we give to the next generation, is this legacy of our values, as His Holiness said earlier. And I think in banking, this is more important than any other industry. If we think about the UK, and I've lived in many places in the world, some of you know I was born in Portugal, I've lived in the UK for 15 years. I think we in the UK have failed society in many ways as banks, and so the importance of values is extremely important for our industry. This idea of responsible banking is something that we need to re-emphasize all the time. So that's the second reason why the spiritual side of the festival is so important. And the final and third one is the element of wealth. And we were talking about the aspect of divinity in wealth. And we were talking about Lakshmi and the representation of wealth, the goddess of fortune. And this is a great alignment with our strategy, if we think about it. Clearly, we focus a lot on wealth, and we focus on wealth as a bank, obviously, but we focus on wealth as an importance also for society. We, again, in the UK, have not been responsible as a society, and we don't place enough emphasis from a financial perspective on saving and on wealth and the responsibility that comes with that. Even understanding the value of money is very important in society, and money being used for the good of society is very important. So wealth is important for society, first of all. Second, it's important for our customers, and I know we have some of our guests here from outside HSBC, and it's important because I was struck by the words of the hard-earned money that people have in their lives and how that makes them wiser. And protecting their wealth is extraordinarily important. So wealth, again, is very important for us because we protect the wealth of our customers. And finally, it's important for our employees. I was struck by the words around purpose. We as employees come to work every day, and a lot of us work very hard because there is a purpose in what we do. And the purpose of what we do is to serve our customers, and to serve our customers protecting their wealth. And I think that gives all of us as employees a purpose to what we do, and I think that's extraordinarily important. So finally, in closing, those are the reasons why I'm proud to say that we also follow the values of Diwali, and we actually also treat wealth as sacred. And I think there's a great alignment there. So I'd like to thank everybody again for joining us tonight. I wish you and all of your families a happy Diwali. And I think you now need to enjoy the rest of the entertainment, and afterwards we will have some food. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Suarez, for summarising tonight's theme. Now, we're only 5 minutes late, so I don't want anybody emailing me complaining. We're only 5 minutes late. Finally, I would like to thank you all ever so much for taking so much out of your precious moments and times in your busy lives and schedules to be here. And just before we leave, as you can imagine, today's event has been a combination of so many energies, from hospitality to friends and family externally, so many individuals internally. We have had at least 3 different sponsors. And I'd also like to thank each and one of you for coming as my very dear friends to come and witness today's festivities. I'd also like to briefly mention that a person who has been nurtured by His Holiness, who actually began as a monk and ended up floating the second largest IT company in India a few years later, has also flown in from Singapore. Can I ask Mr. Rajiv Srivastava to just stand for one moment? I'd just like to thank you for coming all this way and being an example. Please stand. Thank you. Being an example to all of us. Come from a very normal family and then floating a very large IT company and under the guidance of His Holiness. He was so pleased to hear about our initiatives. He wanted to share a gift with every single one of you here today by sponsoring 500 books of The Journey Home, which authored by His Holiness. So please, on your way out, please do collect a gift. You'll also find some other goodies in there for Diwali. Thank you, Rajiv, for coming all this way with Rajesh as well, partner, coming all this way from the Artha Forum to share with us this gift to each and every one of the attendees. Thank you, Rajiv. Ladies and gentlemen, my time is out. Thank you so much. A very happy Vedic New Year. And don't forget, you're sacred, your wealth, given to me, is sacred for you, for me, and for HSBC. Good night, God bless, Namaste, Hare Krishna. Thank you.